Hi everyone, in today's video I'll be talking about the latest character that was just released, Gemini Canon. I'll be talking through his skills, clothes, armor, constellation, also some formation ideas of how to best utilize him. And at the end I'll also talk about whether you should invest in this character and pull in the most recent event or not. Without further ado, let's get started. So let's start off with his ultimate. So his ultimate or his might basically is quite interesting mechanic. But basically try target three enemies and pulls them together. And during that time, first of all, they're not able to do anything. But also quite interesting is that any damage taken by them uh, but any one of them will also be copied onto the other targets. It's quite interesting to know that it's been copied over rather than saying that, for example, it be shared over them. So this is actually a really good combo with any kind of assassin knight who is able to do massive amount of damage to just one character. And in fact, I think that's kind of the idea behind Gemini Canon, which is that he's able to turn some formations, which is focused on only one single um, assassin knight. You're trying to target just one single enemy, but he's able to translate that into almost targeting multiple enemy at the same time, and that effectively allows you to do something really cool information, which I'll talk about later on, which is that you are just able to bring assassins such as Sagittarius Aurorus to do massive amount of damage to one person, but that will actually be copied over to three people, etc. So it's really interesting, and I think that's probably his main game mechanics that he will be bringing to team building. Sorry, oops. Next, let's talk about his second skill, which is looping skill, Galaxian Explosion. There's a lot of text here, so I won't read out every single one of them. But basically, the main thing to note from here is that he will summon a massive meteorite. Takes 6 seconds, so that's really long time for it before it actually hits someone. But during that time, whenever an enemy is interrupted or controlled during that time, immediately you inflict them with some damage and also starfall. At at the end, if you have all three starfall, so i.e. you for some reason control them three times within those 6 seconds, then you are also able to do more damage, which is equal to 50% of however much HP they have lost. So this is massive amount of damage. And on top of that, every single time, let's say if you have maximum starfall, you're actually going to be able to stun them for 4.5 seconds as well. So this is also really cool. Once again, I'll talk this more in kind of the formation building section. But essentially, you really want to pair him up with characters who are able to inflict control effects. And also, this, along with his ultimate, kind of asks you to try to do things slightly more manually rather than putting the game mode into automatic. Because you really want to make sure all of your controls are happening during the time when this meteorite appears, during those 6 seconds. And at the same time, you want to control, let's say, your Sagittarius Aurorus ultimate to also happening at the same time when your Gemini Cannon is using ultimate and linking three enemies together. So that's one suggestion I have for Gemini Cannon is that if you do play him in your team, definitely switch off the auto mode. I think it needs a bit of um, manual timing for you to actually get this right and to bring the most out of this character. But let's continue on with his third skill. So this is the Phantom Demon Emperor attack. Basically, it confuses a random front enemy. Um, Now, so this is slightly different. So confuse an enemy is always good. The thing with this is that it controls a front enemy, which can be good or bad. I generally prefer something which is more like Sea Dragon Cannon, where first of all his skill is directly opposite the target that you want to control, so you can place him so that you have guarantee of which character you're gonna confuse, and also it's happening at the start of the game, so you know immediately when that's gonna happen. This one, because of the looping skill, it does mean that you're able to activate this multiple times in one battle. But controlling a front enemy, a lot of times front enemy will be the tanks, the protectors, and controlling them. I'm not sure how useful that is, to be honest, because normally you want to control the enemy's main DPS to prevent them do massive amount of damage to you and also make them deal higher amount of damage to their allies. Controlling a tank is probably not as useful. So that's kind of just my own opinion on this. However, if you do face some quite offensive formations where they do have a fairly offensive knight up front, let's say Leo or Sagittarius Seiya, or Deathmask, etc., then I think this can work pretty well as well. But this is very, very situational, and in general, I think it's a worse version of Sea Dragon Cannon's ability. Um, Next one, we have Redeemed Soul. Basically, this is pretty straightforward. For every single HP that Gemini Cannon lost, he's gonna gain some extra damage. So that's pretty much it. Now, let's move on to his clothes. His clothes, the first two levels, similar to the ability we just talked about, the skill we just talked about. For every single HP he lost, he is also gonna gain attacking speed. So pretty nice. Then the third one, every single stack full of it's gonna increase the damage taken by 20%. Also, again, nice, but I probably wouldn't say it's essential. The last one I think is really, really good. But also that means you have to put a lot of investment into this character, unfortunately, which is that when he dies, he's gonna summon a lot, basically just a meteor that's gonna hit straight away and deal damage equal to 50% of their lost HP already. So this actually what makes you want to do a pretty offensive team, so that almost you can even send Gemini Cannon to die. In fact, and I will talk about this once again in the formation section, but I will actually recommend, despite the fact Gemini Cannon is an assassin knight, I would recommend you put him up front because he does gain a lot of ability for when he lose more health, and also he kind of want to charge up his Cosmo fast so that he can use his ultimate and link up enemy, and at the same time, even if he dies in the process, you do a lot of damage. So for that reason, I think is you do really want to play him up front, and also try to do a pretty offensive team so they can deal as much as damage as possible by the time when he dies, so you're able to deal to get the most benefit out of it. Finally, let's finish off with his constellation. His constellation, essentially, I think you have to get all 9 points as well. So once again, very expensive character to build. But at the first level, it just extend the duration of the confusion, which is nice, but not the biggest buff, I would say. But then at all 9 star points, this is really nice. And once again, enhancing my proposal, putting him up front. This is any enemy who attacks cannon will receive the Vision Demon Imperial Fist. So remember, that's the skill where you'll be confused. Now, this can only activate once per enemy, so you can't try to use this multiple times. However, what I found really nice about this is it doesn't say anything about like a minimum number of interval before this can be activated. And this makes it really nice in the sense that what I can do is once again put Gemini Cannon up front. Now when you're up front, all of the enemies will hit you, or at least the three enemies directly facing you will be hitting you. And what this basically means is that you would be able to confuse three enemies straight away. And confusing three enemies straight away is gonna help you a lot because it basically provides survivability both for yourself and also for the rest of the team. So to me, this is actually really powerful. And even though it can only be activated once per enemy, like I said, you almost want to send Gemini Cannon into a bit of a kamikaze mode where you let him die fast to do a lot of damage as well. So I don't think it actually matters too much for the fact that it can only be active once. So yeah, so once again, like I said, you really need all 9 star points, and unfortunately, that basically means you need nine destiny points for constellation and all 4 levels. So maximum you need to get at least level 30 for his clothes as well. So a very expensive character to build, but he does possess pretty interesting mechanics that is worth watching out for. Now let's talk about some formation ideas for Gemini Cannon. I don't have him in my account here, which is why I'm going to represent him with Sea Dragon Cannon instead. Now, one thing that you want to note is that despite the fact that he is an assassin, you want to put him up front to really take advantage of the fact that he gets more powerful when he lose HP, and also you want to accelerate when he can release his ultimate, and also even if he dies in the worst case scenario, you are actually able to deal a lot of damage if you have his armor completely unlocked. Now, as I mentioned during the skill section, he is really good in the sense that he's able to link up three enemies together so that it effectively turns one of your single damage dealing attacks, such as any attack by assassins, into a multi night area attack. Um, Out of all the assassins, I definitely recommend Sagittarius Aurorus. A lot of times, Sagittarius Aurorus is very powerful because you get into the snowball effect, but sometimes it's just a bit hard to kind of kill out five enemies in a row, especially when they're two tanks. So the fact that you are able to link up three enemies together, so that rather than for you to be able to do your ultimate five times in a row, you only have to do that three times in a row. It's a lot easier. It's just a lot better in my opinion. Now, the next one I want to definitely recommend to pair up with Gemini Canon is going to be Aquarius Camus. Now, Aquarius Camus with his constellation unlocked have this nice ability of freezing the enemy for I believe half a second every single time when you do your normal attack. Now half a second normally doesn't sound like a lot, and I agree with you. However, if you pair this up with Gemini Cannon's looping skill, it's actually quite powerful because what it does is for every single time when he has this meteorite about to fall, if the enemy is controlled, i.e., being froze, even though it's only for half a second, they're going to be dealt attack with Starfall. And when they have maximum Starfall, they're going to be stunned, they're going to be dealt loads of damage as well. So I actually think it has really good ability synergy with Gemini Cannons. I definitely recommend you bring Aquarius Cannons. Now, now with a Fire Knight and also Wind Element Knight here, you kind of want to go down to five element formation. So you need one water element knight and also one earth element knight. Now the default option for water element knight is normally Deathmask, which is definitely a very solid choice because he's very powerful. However, purely from synergy point perspective, I'm actually gonna do a bit of a controversial choice by saying that you may want to consider Mermaid Tetris. Now, this is for two reasons. One, if you bring Deathmask ultimate is trying to attack multiple enemies. So even though it's good, it's not really trying. It's not the greatest synergy with the strategy you want to employ with Gemini Cannon. Whereas Mermaid Tetris, she should be linking up with Sagittarius Aurora here, and that basically increase the likelihood of you doing more damage and also really try to make sure you kill off an enemy and also do as much damage as possible when Gemini Cannon releases ultimate and links three enemy together. Now Mermaid Tetris is normally good only for formations where you have like one damage dealer, and that is kind of the formation you are going for here. You have Sagittarius Aurora really trying to do the bulk of the damage here, so that's very good. And also on top of that, Mummy also have a bit of control effect with a looping skill, which basically is in a blinding coral or something like that, which basically can stiff the target for I think like 1 second with 1.5 seconds, something like that. So there's also a bit of control synergy along, which is quite nice, and once again, good synergy with Gemini Cannon. Now you need someone for the Earth slot now, and there are a lot of good options. And to be honest, like once again, there's so many good options. I wouldn't recommend Virgo Shun. I think if you bring Virgo Shun, your team is gonna be too fragile. Um, and also once again, Virgo Shun is really doing like AOE damage. That's not really the direction you're going for here. You could use Taurus Aldebaran. Taurus Aldebaran is nice in the sense that he will be reflecting damage. So hopefully with Taurus Aldebaran, you also increase the likelihood of you are able to get enemy out. So you kind of once again you don't need even the Sagittarius Seiya to release three ultimate three times. Hopefully you can get away with just releasing that twice. because already one enemy will be killed off by Taurus Aldebaran reflection, and then you release one ultimate to kill off an enemy, and also then for the second attack, you are attacking someone which is linked up, three enemies which are linked up together by Gemini Cannon. So I think my Taurus Aldebaran is a very good option, and also because he's a protector now, you can actually put him up front, so that's a good shout. Um, Now, if you do think survivability is going to be a problem because you are putting kind of like Gemini Cannon up front, and Gemini Cannon is quite fragile, and you are a bit worried about what he can live long enough to even release his ultimate, then I would kind of recommend to bring a healer in the form of Hound Asterion. Hound Asterion is good in the sense that first of all, he's able to heal, but also you can try to reduce the damage the enemy's backline is going to take. Now, remember, how Asterion is reducing the enemy backline is going to inflict on you. It's not reducing how much your backline is going to suffer from. So even though you put Gemini Cannon up front, he's still going to be benefit from Hound Asterion's presence. So that's good. And if this is the formation you're going with, I kind of recommend you put Sagittarius up front, or maybe Honda Steering. But Sagittarius is generally a okay option up front if you have his armor completely unlocked to level 30. Now, the other option you can do is sorry, let me just bring Sagittarius back. The other option you can do is Sirius. Sirius is also good and also have a bit of a control effect with Gemini kind of in the sense that if Sirius' shield is broken, he's able to stun the enemy. So there's also a bit of synergy there. So that's also not a bad option. And you can even bring Argo, to be honest, because Argo also have this control synergy by petrifying the enemy. So to be honest, like the Earth Knight slot, you have really good option. You can do either of Argo, Sirius, Hound Asterion, or Taurus Aldebaran. Like all of them are good choices. You can really play that around depending on the enemy's lineup, etc. But as for the other four slots, I do highly recommend you bring in Myrmidon, Sagittarius, and Christ Camus. So, what's my verdict of Gemini Cannon? And should you invest in him in the most recent event? To me, Gemini Cannon is a very pretty good character with really interesting mechanics. Um, I don't think he is gonna be in your first team because a lot of time you don't need that. But what can see a situation where he really shines is more in arena, etc. When you have to fill in three different teams. The reason why I say that is normally there's only a finite number of damage dealers that you have in your team, and when you have to build in three teams, or later on I have seen in Chinese version of the game you have to build five teams, etc. It's really hard for you to spread out all of your main DPS amongst the three or five teams that you're gonna have. So what happens is sometimes you may have to end up in a team with only one damage dealer, and if that damage dealer happens to be an assassin, such as Sagittarius Aurorus, a lot of times that's not sufficient for you to really kill off the enemy one by one because he's just slightly too fragile. By the time you have to go through all of the enemy one by one, that means you have to use him to take out two protector knights as well, two tanks, and that's just going to be really difficult. And I see that a lot of time in maps as well, which is that yes, my Sagittarius managed to wipe out two or three enemies, and his ultimate is already his Cosmo is already built up, so he can quite easily release his fourth and fifth ultimate as well to try to take out the other two. But there's a tank just stopping him for a while, and he's just a bit too fragile for him to really last that long. So Gemini Cannon, I think, will help a lot in this kind of situation so that you have the flexibility of trying to spread around your damage dealers when you have to fill in multiple lineup. So that's kind of the main situation, obviously, Gemini Cannon being put in. So I think he's definitely a good character and he is able to essentially help shape the strategy of the team by quite a lot. But having said all of that, there's two things I would like to point out before you make your decision. One is that he's a light and dark character, so and also he needs a lot of investment. If you are on a budget for free to play, account, you typically don't have enough resources to train up multiple light and dark characters. You normally only want to focus one or two. And if I have to go through the pecking order, Gemini Canon is definitely not near the top. And also, you probably want to save some of the resources for summoning him, i.e., the petals. You really want to save him for some of the more OP upcoming characters, such as Poseidon or I think like God Clothes Seiya as well. So those are some really really powerful characters that's gonna be coming up. So I would actually suggest you probably save up the resources for Gemini Cannon. Even though he's a good character, he just not on the same level as to some of the other light and dark. And really just redirect all of your investment into the other characters instead. The second thing I'll point out is as good as Gemini Cannon is, right now the meta is going to be, at least for a very long time before Poseidon is coming out, will be mainly focused on Sagittarius Seiya and Virgo Shun combo, where they do massive amount of damage to everyone at the start of the battle. And Gemini Cannon, unfortunately, I don't think he is strong enough to withstand all of those damage. Now, because you have to put him up front, he is already in a pretty weird situation where being assassinated, he has weak defense, and you are trying to make him stay at front line for a bit. Now, on top of that, if you already suffer, let's say 50 or 60% of damage from Virgo Shun and Sagittarius Seiya's opening attacks, I don't think Gemini Cannon is even able to last through his almost like battle changing mechanics of his ultimate. So for that reason, I don't think Gemini Cannon, as good as he is, I don't think he has a role to play in the current meta as well. So if you are really wanting to build Gemini Cannon, I think he's more of a long-term investment for in the future when the meta shifts up slightly more, and also when you actually have a need of playing him across multiple teams, etc. So yeah, so that's my verdict on Gemini Cannon. Good character with unique mechanics, but unfortunately, doesn't really have a role to play in the current meta, and too expensive, so that it's you're probably better worse redirecting all of the investment and resources from him to another light and dark character that will be upcoming in the future.